Let's jump into the technicals at Asia Open. It's 10:39 on Thursday, the 25th of June, and we'll start off with gold here because this thing absolutely got hammered, and we've really sort of taken out some major key levels through here at the moment. But the question now is, have we sort of found the bottom? Have we sort of got at least the room for a breather here? And I would probably lean in the camp to say yes, we kind of are. But let's have a quick look at sort of just the last little breakdown here. So as you said, so with the last video I did on this with the technical analysis, we were sort of coming back and retesting this level here. This is the very typical three wave that we see. It comes down, finds a support, comes up, finds a resistance, tackles that level there, and as you can see, perfect little back test, and then bang, all the way through just to massively new lows. And that I think we're at sort of multi-month. Yeah, well, we are. Not think I know that we're at multi-month lows. You can see this first sell down here when we started to sort of find a little bit of a bounce, and that actually sort of came up and perfectly kissed that 38% retracement. Now, 38% retracement is obviously a very strong continuation. So this is your early indicator, as I said in the video the other day, that we could see the sellers were really capping this top side over here, and they started to apply pressure as they sort of moved this move down. You can see a little bit of a support with the buyers when they were trying to move it up, and then it got taken out. This then became that sort of sell zone, and pretty much what gave us a little move to the lower side. Support around that sort of 50 area was something that actually, if you were watching it while they were trading it, as soon as this level got given up, it dropped very quick. It dropped like $30 in like, just a few minutes kind of thing. Where's the low time frame through here? It was this little candle just here, which, as you can see, coming through that sort of 40-30 area, we went 40-30 down to 40.06. That's a $30 candle. As you can see, sort of like, it's only one amongst a bunch of them, but you can tell that that's a significant area because that stops dropping out. This isn't just like sell, 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 back and forth kind of stuff. That was just bang, very sharp and fast coming down there. And it's actually provided exactly the same level, pretty much, for where we saw that bounce come back up to after we hit underneath 4,000. So the idea is here, you take out the stops down the bottom, we see some short covering, pushes it back up, second wave coming down. Now we did take out a little bit of a low here. This is on a 30 minutes. Let's get onto something halfway decent. You can see that the RSI is not really showing that it really wants to hammer it down here at the moment, but you need to see some sort of confirmation moving this thing a little bit higher. So let's put in a little zone here because this is where we can see that the sellers are sitting at the moment. So this is where, if your buyers are sort of keen to sort of push this thing a bit higher, this is where you need to get above. Then we're sort of looking up to probably most likely this to be your next area, and then this to be your area here. There's a lot of work to be done down here, and the only way that this thing is really going to recover at the moment is dollar sell down. It's coming into a resistance zone. We'll see some flows come back into the metals. Plus also you see some profit taking, those sort of things, and sort of hit some short stops, that kind of stuff. That's what will sort of feed this to sort of potentially get a bit of a bounce. But again, it's just that it's a bounce at this stage. There's no guarantee that sort of like we aren't sort of going to end up. Well, actually, it's not that I don't think it's a guarantee. I think we pretty much are definitely going to be heading down into the mid threes eventually. But as for this session through Asia, certainly a bit of a sort of squeeze up here before the sellers have another go down there. Really till you get back above sort of say 4,100. And then this could potentially come into a little bit of a fake out trap. You could see further gains in that. But anytime that it's sort of sub 4,100, I'm expecting this really just to be any sort of bounce to be sold into. So short-term levels above sort of 40.20, 40.60, and then 40.90. Anywhere sort of like from those areas, I would expect the sellers to really sort of come down and sort of squash any sort of potential bounce. Have a look at silver. Silver back down to, that's not the chart we're using. This is the chart we're using, and it's pretty much just following the exact sort of flow that we were looking for. If we look at that again, this is the FOMC sell down. We came back up, almost kissed that 61%, came down, retested that bottom there, and this is the perfect three-leg structure. It happens on every time frame. We get the sell down, we find support, we come up, we find resistance. Where's resistance? At a previous level of support. That was that wick down from bottom of FOMC, that first initial drop. And then we sort of come down, we tackle those lows, and we break through. It was a bit of an interesting sort of break because, as you can see, it didn't really sort of pick up much speed till it got to around that 60 level there, which is probably actually just underneath these wicks from when was this? Back at start of 11th of June. But as you can see, breaks through here. That becomes leg 1. Now we look for leg 2. And again, we look for that move back down there. So anywhere between sort of this wick over here and this level up over here, 61.50 to 63.50. I expect the sellers to really sort of jump back in and sort of stamp on these things. Look, it's not going to bounce in one go because, you know, it really needs to sort of filter out a lot of people. But the thing is, because we've sort of hit some pretty sort of high time frame targets, 39.50 was a big target, front run it a little bit with gold. And 55 is also just above 54 with that sort of previous little sort of almost cup and handle on the way up breakout level and that, and the market sort of front run it there. So I still think those levels need to be touched up. I do think silver eventually will sort of go down below 50. However, I do think at the sort of in the interim and that, we could be due for a little bit of a correction through here. It could very much just sort of do a bit of a sideways hustle though, before we actually see any sort of significant sort of recovery move. But again, any sort of recovery move, I do think is really just going to be sort of squashed at some stage. So certainly a bit of a trade should we start to see a recovery up through here, but there's a lot of work to be done for metals to get back on top of things. Just while I'm doing that, I'll have a quick look at the gold-silver ratio, because this is the key indicator. And it's because, I mean, it's technical analysis is great, and when things literally sort of come to that is pretty much to the cent, and we get a market reaction, it's pretty good. But jump on a higher time frame. This is on the daily here. Now this is an early indicator. I put posts up on X and that the whole way through with this. This is a 13-month falling resistance. We had a perfect structure of the breakout here. We had the breakout, it hit resistance where we expected it to, backtest, breakout level, attack the highs. This is the 3-wave structure. Leg 1, find resistance, back, find support, third leg, tackle these highs. You can see it thought about it for a second, but bang, broke through. So now we're in wave 1 of this next move up here. What we can kind of expect, if this does hold, this zone here, is a retest of this level down here before continuation moving here. And this is pretty much in line with what I'm kind of expecting with metals and that we will see a little bit of fluff around. I don't think it's going to move straight away first thing in the morning, but I do think that we will start to sort of potentially see a little bit of a cooling here and then sort of a push up higher. Should this thing continue though, and should we break above here, let me just put an alert on this one. If we see a sort of continuation through here, that will sort of pretty much come in line with sort of new lows with the metals. It does have a little bit of room. This is on the daily. How's a 4-hour looking? 4 hours, a little bit overbought. As you can see, it's pulling back here a little bit. Look, you look for these things on the equivalent time frame that you have. And basically, sort of with a 4-hour time frame, you could expect to pull back down here, but you're not going to get a complete trend change around for a weekly or a daily time frame on the lower time frames. They could be early indicators, but you need to confirm it on the higher time frame as well. Have a look at the dollar. The dollar, that's not the chart we're using. This is the chart we're using. And as you can see, it's tipping into its zone here as well. You can see that, like we saw this, and I covered this the other day as well, that the dollar is in massive breakout mode. So when it's in a mode like this, it's called the wrecking ball. And it's called the wrecking ball because it gives a whole bunch of little top signals and then it charges through. So like we saw over here, it respected the chart and we saw a little bit of a pushback. Doesn't mean the game's over and it's back down over here, but it means it has a little bit of a cooling and it recharges. Now we've come up into a higher time frame. Now, higher level of resistance. Now this resistance level is actually more significant than this middle one. This middle one, we expected a reaction and we got a little reaction. This one is a lot more significant should they go above, but we haven't actually tipped out the top of it yet. That's the top side for it there, which is another, sort of 20, 30 points away. Just trying to make sure, because some of these charts have different reads, but about 30 points or so. So I would expect that, whether this sort of happens through today or tomorrow, to potentially see a little bit of sort of fluffing around up here, maybe a couple of attempts, and then a bit of a cooling. But should we get a bit of a cooling, I don't think we'll really come back down very far, because this thing is certainly in charge. The way that this thing acts when it's like this is to keep on powering through. It doesn't mean that you won't see some profit taking, doesn't mean you won't see some flows come out of it temporarily. And we have had a pretty solid run through here, you have to admit. So a couple of attempts to confirm this, little bit of a pullback. That'll come in line with the metals potentially getting a little bit of a bounce. As the metals get a bit of a bounce, they will see the dollar come down. But I think as soon as we start to see the flows come back into the dollar, that's when we'll resume downward sort of direction with the metals. So I don't think that's a sort of, hey, let's buy the bottom of got gold and set and forget kind of thing. I think this is pretty much all you're going to see is a bit of a bounce. And finally, just onto Aussie. Aussie's really sort of just taken a beating down here. As I said, this is only just about the technical, so I'm not going to worry about the fact that we got data coming out today. But we do have a couple of zones underneath here where we could, should this thing break lower, given that bit of data, expect it to sort of see a bit of a bounce in that. Look, it has taken a bit of a hit. It is coming into a bit of a zone at the moment as well. So if we put these here and put these here, these are your kind of levels that we're expecting buyers to potentially kind of sit in here. It was a solid break as soon as it came through 70. 70, it was the same one that I said, it's the same that we had up over here at 71. Tested it, tested it, tested it. Even if you want to drag that down, you can show that there's a back test through there. But it tested it, tested it, tested. When it broke, it hammered down. This one, tested it a couple of times. Put it on a lower time frame, you can see that it held it. 1, 2, kind of 3, 4. And once it gave it up on the 870, bang, push down here. But as you can see, it is trying to sort of level out here at the moment. Same sort of thing with the metals and that. I think that potentially we do find a little bit of a bounce through here. Should we break lower, we're probably looking at mid 68, so 68.50 or so. But I think realistically anything down here has got a good chance of having a little bit of a sort of rebalancing back up to these higher levels over here. If we have a look at sort of where these things are bounced to, so that was the FOMC kind of area through there. If we drag this across here, if we do sort of look up into this area around this sort of 50 to 61% retracement, I do think this is where the sellers will sort of come in again should we see a bit of a rally up here. So same sort of thing, if we do see some sort of bounce and sort of sustained sort of rally, I do think that's kind of the level of trade that we are looking for there. All right, that's it from me.